In this edition of I Escaped, a convicted murderer determined to break out mails himself to freedom.
I'm not no damn prison escapee.
You'd have done run by now.
And a female guard springs her lover, and they go on a shooting spree.
He's a bit of a wacko, Petey Gibb, and still is for that matter.
Around the world, over 9 million prisoners are behind bars. These are the stories of the few who dared to break out. Pollock Federal Penitentiary, Louisiana, a high-security fortress with 1,500 of America's most dangerous prisoners caged behind its bars. Surrounded on all sides by the dense Katachi forest, no one had ever escaped. But in April 2006, cold-blooded killer Richard Lee McNair was bent on being the first. This smooth-talking, two-faced charmer was a consummate con man. He'd worked both sides of the law as an undercover drug buyer for the police and a petty thief, until killing a truck driver in a heist gone wrong.
At that point, he went from being a two-bit thief to being a cold-blooded murderer.
McNair was handed 3 life sentences for armed robbery, attempted murder, and murder. When convicted, McNair was serving as a sergeant in the United States Air Force, trained in martial arts, survival skills, and the art of escape.
All prisoners who are serving a life imprisonment think about escaping. Mr. McNair just has the knowledge and the drive and the willingness to do so.
In one attempt, he used stolen lip balm to slide out of handcuffs.
Then they put him in the Bismarck jail. And that's where, after a few years, he and a bunch of guys in Bible study, they decide that they're going to escape through the roof. So he escapes through the ventilation system, crawls all the way through, gets out to the roof of the prison, jumps off, takes off running, wasn't seen for 9.5 months.
Incarcerated again, McNair's attention was once again focused on breaking out.
Through the process of Freedom of Information Act, was able to obtain all the documents, all the materials on his second escape, and even on his first escape, to learn what he did wrong so he wouldn't repeat the same mistakes again.
McNair came up with a radical plan. He charmed his way into a skills training program for inmates. His job? Repairing mail bags.
They had checks, yes. They were checking on their prisoners. They were keeping a good track of them, of course. But at the end of the day, he found the weakest link in the system. In all of my experience of working on criminal cases over the last decade, Richard McNair is by far the most cunning and intelligent criminal out there.
His daring plan, shrink-wrap himself inside a mail bag, then get shipped to freedom. A plan filled with danger and requiring him to be extremely fit.
He's also trained himself in physical fitness. He ran for days and months, and to a point running 3 hours a day.
McNair's job gave him access to delivery times and destinations, but it didn't give him access to a container big enough to hide in. He needed to make one.
He created this escape pod, is what we like to call it. And it was basically stacked with mail bags all around it. Now, on the morning of his escape, he finds an orange pallet for the base of the pod, puts it in the middle of his work area. Then he gets the frame of a cart and sticks it on top. Walks around to the middle and squats down Indian style. How he did this part, I don't know, because the man is 6 foot tall. Then gets a plastic container and sticks it over top of his head. And what the U.S. Marshals believe, he did have help inside of the prison, because there's no way in the world he's going to be able to cover himself up with mail bags, shrink wrap himself into this pod, and be lifted off site.
McNair planned everything down to the last detail.
He was pulling things in over time, things that he could tape onto his body. He would duct tape power bars and protein shakes and things like that onto his body.
Once McNair is squeezed into the pod, his accomplices seal him with plastic wrap.
I don't know how McNair did this. I can barely breathe. I can barely move in here. I mean, I'm 5'4". McNair is 6 foot, 200 pounds.
McNair sits in his shrink-wrapped escape pod waiting for the mail truck. With temperatures nearing 90 degrees, can he survive? April 5th, 2006, Pollock Federal Penitentiary, Louisiana. Shrink-wrapped in a pallet of mail bags, Richard Lee McNair is sweltering in 90-degree heat, waiting for his special delivery out of jail.
I would say it took years of planning for him to come up with this kind of escape, to be able to escape out of a maximum security prison in the United States.
At 9 a.m., the pallet of bags with McNair inside is lifted onto a truck and taken to a warehouse less than a mile outside the prison gates.
At approximately 11 o'clock, they did a head count of all prisoners within the USP Pollock Penitentiary and discovered they had one short.
Meanwhile, in the warehouse, McNair is hacking his way out of his shrink-wrapped cocoon.
I believe he was in there probably 3 to 4 hours before he was able to cut himself out.
After freeing himself from his escape pod, McNair slips out of the warehouse undetected and runs for his life. Eight miles into his newfound freedom, McNair is stopped by a state trooper while running along railway tracks.
Do you have any form of identification on you? No, man. What's your name? Robert Jones.
What it is, we got an escapee.
Oh. Where from?
Prison.
There's a prison here?
Yeah.
Smooth-talking McNair claims he is just an innocent jogger.
He tells a good story, and he makes it believable. And he was able to give some geographical areas that the officer was familiar with. And he was also able to again, just disarm this officer and believing that he was not a prisoner escapee because of his, calming attitude.
Amazingly, experienced officer Carl Bordelon believes McNair's story.
Carl knew that there may be a prison escapee, but he didn't have a lot of information. And with what he had, he did the best that he could interviewing this guy.
No. I'm not no prison escapee. Were you in the military?
No, I wasn't.
I'm retired Army.
He was just so collected in his thoughts and his words and his actions, and that was the most amazing thing. And that's really what won Carl over.
Yeah, I'm not no damn prison escapee.
You'd have done run by now. You know that yourself.
The exchange lasts 10 minutes until McNair jogs off, free again.
Have a good day now.
Be careful, buddy.
Thank you.
All right.
After McNair conned the officer, he was able to jump a train, a cargo train, and go north of Louisiana, approximately 120 miles.
McNair writes to his parents claiming he is heading south to Mexico. Instead, he's going north to Canada, stealing cars and money along the way. For a year and a half, he is not heard of until Constables Nelson Levesque and Stefan Gano spot a suspicious van in New Brunswick.
As the light switched for green, we activated the emergency equipment, and at that point, we thought that he was going to stop.
At the wheel, McNair pulls away sharply. He shows no sign of stopping.
Southbound on Andrew. We had no explanation for why he was fleeing from us. We just thought it could have been contraband cigarettes, a stolen vehicle that had not been reported stolen yet. Requesting backup. Again, we're in pursuit, Alpha 6 in pursuit.
With backup on the way, the Mounties play cat and mouse through the town until McNair makes a mistake.
He's now in the provincial parking lot. He has nowhere to go. We'll be blocking the entrance and the exit. He's going off-road.
McNair guns the van up the dirt road, and as backup arrives, the Mounties give chase.
Okay, city dispatch, we've located the van. It's in the trail behind Provincial Hospital.
Hitting a dead end, McNair bolts from the van and flees into the forest.
I saw the suspect just in front of me, and I tried to cut the distance of him, and I tackled him on the ground.
He said, "Let me catch my breath." He repeated that a couple of times, and there he said, "You guys got a big fish." He said, "I'm Richard Lee McNair, a convicted murderer from the U.S., and I escaped from jail."
After eluding capture for 18 months, Richard Lee McNair finally lost the game he played so well. He was reincarcerated to serve his 3 life sentences plus an extra 2.5 years for his prison break. Coming up, unfortunate circumstances force a prison guard to break her lover out and go on the run. Melbourne, Australia, 1993. 275 male inmates are locked up in a new state-of-the-art facility in the heart of the city's business district. Inside, 38-year-old Peter Robert Gibb, in and out of jail for the last 20 years.
Peter's a bit of a wacko, Peter Gibb, and still is for that matter.
Gibb's latest sentence was 12 years for the armed robbery of an armored car on Valentine's Day, 1991.
He was a fairly hardened and experienced criminal.
But even hardened criminals have a softer side. His was 28-year-old mother of 2, prison officer Heather Parker, whose marriage was on the rocks.
Well, at first I didn't notice him. I mean, a prisoner's a prisoner, that kind of thing.
Back in 1992, a fellow prison officer found the door to a linen closet in the prison was locked. When the closet was finally opened, a red-faced Heather Parker came out, followed by Peter Gibb.
I found the right man. It's just unfortunate circumstances around us have made it very difficult.
The scandal rocked the corrections department.
They didn't want her to work in the prison. They didn't want to work with her, and the organisation had to transfer to another area of corrections.
Heather was sent to work at correctional headquarters in South Melbourne. Contact with Gibb was forbidden, but love-struck Heather Parker was desperate. Her new job gave her access to restricted files that revealed the prison's secrets. Knowing it would be the end of her career, Parker hatched a plan to break out her jailbird boyfriend.
If you look at prisons, generally there's bars on windows, and with that prison there was no bars on the windows. Neither was there any razor ribbon around the perimeter.
Instead, the Melbourne prison relied on bullet-resistant polycarbonate windows. Heather saw this as a weak point. Banned from seeing each other, Parker and Gibb recruited career criminal Archie Butterly to act as their go-between and help pull off the breakout. On March 7, 1993, during a prison boxing match, Peter and Archie make their move.
It's speculated that in the boxing tournament, that when the equipment came in, one of the mouth guards was actually plastic explosive.
As Butterly keeps watch for passing guards, Gibb sticks the plastic explosive to the window. A deafening explosion rocks the building as the bulletproof glass shatters. Gibb, dazed but desperate to escape, knocks out the remains of the window with his feet. With the whole prison now on full alert, they have only seconds to make their getaway.
They use bed sheets to lower themselves through the window and down onto the ground.
Gibb and Butterly race to the getaway car and grab the loaded revolver left by Parker before speeding into traffic. 60 seconds in, their high-speed escape turns into a demolition derby. Gibb smashes into another car. And without stopping, he crashes into the entrance of the freeway. Armed and dangerous, both escapees attempt to force a motorcyclist from his bike.
Next thing I saw a police car come racing up the road here, and the guy got his baton out and went running up to the guys on the bike. One guy hopped off the bike, turned around and shot him a few times.
Team, we've got a report of a member down. We've had a member shot.
Officer Trelaw has been shot twice in the chest.
The other policeman dived for cover and returned fire, but the two prisoners managed to escape in the police car. Police believe one of the men is injured, possibly shot.
As they escape in the stolen police car, Gibb and Butterly are desperate to rendezvous with accomplice Heather Parker.
30 detectives have taken part in raids on homes of known accomplices across Melbourne, but so far there have been no confirmed sightings of the two escapees.
Gibb and Butterly dump the police vehicle at Riverside Quay, where the witnesses see them meet up with Parker.
They were driven away by a woman in a black Suzuki Vitara four-wheel drive with the number plate DYV 969.
The lovers are finally reunited, but the escape has turned ugly, and the worst is still to come. Melbourne, 1993. With the help of prison officer Heather Parker, Peter Gibb and Archie Butterly have just escaped custody.
We've got a report of a member down. We've had a member shot.
They've shot a policeman, stole a police car, rendezvoused with Heather Parker, and disappeared. After 5 days on the run, Gibb and Parker arrive at the remote Gaffney Creek Hotel, 120 miles north of Melbourne.
I was rather surprised at the arrival of this unusual-looking fellow. He had his arm in a sling. He had no socks on, but a pair of shoes. He wanted accommodation for the night for himself and his wife and his young son.
The badly injured Archie Butterly hides in their room while Gibb and Parker do their best to fit in with the locals.
And I said, oh, please, come and join in with us. We were having a good time. So they ordered a meal, and I said, would you like me to take fish and chips down to the child in the room? And they said, oh, no, well, I'll take it down, but he's not having the fish and chips, he's having the steak, which I thought was unusual, but you get lots of unusual things happening in Gaffney's Creek.
Bill Gribble's suspicions intensify when Gibb purchases too much alcohol for a couple and their young son.
And that was really the last I saw them.
6 a.m. the next morning.
I heard shouting that I awoke to, and I heard a voice saying, Bill, you've got a fire.
Police were tipped off to the escapees' whereabouts after the Gaffney's Creek pub burnt to the ground last night. The escapees had checked into the hotel.
The trio had vanished again, this time into the vast wilderness of the Australian bush.
Very remote part of the state, very hilly, with thick trees and steep tracks and roads. It's a very difficult place to search.
We looked around for 2 or 3 days, couldn't find them there. There's a pretty big police contingent up there.
But then, a lucky break. A couple on a fishing trip report a vehicle hidden in the brush. With one cop already having been shot, the police are taking no chances. They split up and start combing the area. Dog handler Trevor Berryman heads straight to the river.
The dog actually stopped at the end of the beach and put its nose in the air, and Trevor's gone, I'm pulling the dog back, someone's really close by. I've seen flashes coming from the bush in front of me. I thought, oh, someone's shooting at me.
In a hail of bullets, Gibb, Parker, and Butterly open fire on the police.
I felt the air of the bullets go past my head. I basically kept firing all the way into the river, and by the time I actually got to the water, I was out of ammunition.
Still dodging the fugitives' bullets, Dave Impey jumps in the river.
Pulled the magazine off and reloaded, and then came up out of the water and started firing again.
Impey fires off 2 more magazines, 60 bullets.
All I could think was, I can't see them. I know where the shots roughly came from. If I can put enough rounds into that position, maybe I'll hit one of them.
The firefight lasted over half an hour. When the backup team arrives, stun grenades are tossed into the bush. Hearing nothing, a dog is sent in. When he returns, he's covered in blood.
We thought, well, there's someone in there. They're either there and not that well, or there and dead.
Butterly was dead. Forensic test would reveal he was not killed by a police bullet.
My guess is that one of the other two fired at us and one of the other two shot him.
But Gibb and Parker were still on the loose. So the police surrounded the area and quickly cornered the fugitives.
Peter Gibb and warder Heather Parker have been formally charged with attempted murder and numerous other offences following the dramatic shootout with police in northeastern Victoria.
Peter Gibb was sentenced to 8 years for his offences. Heather Parker got 5. But in an ironic twist, lovers' luck would favour them again. Gibb was acquitted of the armed robbery for which he had received his initial 12-year sentence. It meant he was out of jail 6 months ahead of Heather Parker. These once locked-up lovers still live in Melbourne, and today are the parents of 2 young sons.